So, welcome to this introduction to After Effects. If you can load up After Effects if you haven't already, and when you get to this start screen, what I'd like to do is just push the X in the corner. Rather than setting up a new project initially in this tutorial, we're actually going to use the set that up through the importation of the objects. So, this tutorial is a parallaxing tutorial. A parallax is where we use 2D images to kind of mimic a 3D or give it a further illusion of depth using different speeds of movement. It's very similar to the process that Disney created with the multi-image plane camera. And if you haven't seen how that looks, there's plenty of videos kind of on YouTube and so on where Walt Disney explains the hardware of that. It's definitely worth kind of checking out and having a look at. So, once we're on this scene, I'm just going to explain this window. So, here we have our composition. So this is where all of our assets, once they're compiled together and they're all moving and so on, we'll be able to see in here. To the left-hand side under Project, we have all of our assets. And at the bottom here, we have the timeline where our individual elements will be shown with the time that they play in. So to begin, we're going to import some assets. So I'm going to right click on this window here, and I'm going to go to import, and I'm going to go to file. Okay. So hopefully you've downloaded the IndieEdit Photoshop file. So if you haven't, go to Moodle and download it. But if you can not open this in Photoshop, just leave the file there and load it in through After Effects. So by clicking on this file here, it's going to bring up some more options. We've got a Photoshop sequence if it's already animated, which it isn't. So we're going to leave that unchecked. And we can import it as footage, but we don't want to. We want to import it as a composition. If we composition with retain layer sizes, all of our layers have different dimensions, so it will cause issues. We want our composition just to remain exactly the same as it was in Photoshop. So by selecting composition and going to import, we can bring in our image. So it's going to bring up this next window. Make sure the import kind is still on composition, and remember we want editable layer styles. Click OK. And we're going to get two things. Firstly, we've got our layers from Photoshop in here, and as you can see, I've named them based on what we need them for. They're ordered by size, but when we load up the composition in here, we want them in the order that they're in the Photoshop layer. To do that, I'm just going to hide them by clicking that arrow again. I'm going to double click on this composition, and that will appear in this bottom window. So we have our foreground layer, which is this kind of golden trinket that Indiana has found. We have our midground layer, which is Indiana Jones, and we have our background layer, which is the background. If I push these eyes, you can see that they're all separate. Now you can kind of see that these have been edited. So although they might immediately feel okay to use a composition, actually they are very different. So if we just go into here, some resources, and go into this, and I'm going to show you what the image originally looked like, and we can kind of compare that then against Indiana Jones. So we've seen that we have, so that was our starting image, and that is my ending image. So you can see some subtle changes. So the foreground's fine because we haven't really changed that. If you see, we had to add in his arm, and I've literally recut his left arm here in Photoshop and added it in. The blending here is a bit weak, and it's something that obviously with more time and kind of practice for you'll be able to kind of fix. For speed today, just kind of learn this effect. It's been very crudely put together. And then behind that we have the final background. Okay, which obviously we've cut some bits out to kind of include that in. So, no one probably really noticed these. If I hadn't told you it, I wonder how, it stands a chance that you might not have even noticed. So what we're going to do is, the very first thing is we're going to work on the background. So I'm going to hide the foreground, I'm going to hide the midground layer by pushing the eye, and I'm just going to go to this panel here. You can see that it's highlighted as I'm hovering over it. I'm just going to scroll back on the mouse to a bit more space. So in the background, I'm going to push the down arrow. On the background, I'm going to push it again and transform. and I'm going to increase the scale. So we actually want to move this left and right. Now if I kind of move this from the left to the right, you'll see we've got all that black space in the background opening up, which is going to look really horrible, and it's going to ruin that illusion of the scene because we've now got this empty space appearing. And it will cause the audience to be distracted and notice it, and it will take their focus away from what we want them to see. So I'm going to click on this part here on the scale tool, and I'm going to type in 110, and because the chain is connected here, the chain's on, that's it off, that's it on, it's going to keep it, do both the width and the height. So one of these is the width, one of them is the height. Now it's very tempting to kind of click on these arrows, but if I was to, let's say, rescale this up, as you can see, it's changed it down here and even if I was to kind of change that to 100, it would change the other panel as well. So for best practice, try and use these settings rather than clicking on these boxes here. To undo, I've pushed Control Z. So what I'm going to do now is reposition this to the left, and that means that we've now got all this space here to kind of drift across. So on our timeline, you'll see we have 5 seconds. By default, you've probably started out with 30. So to check that, if we go to our project files and go to composition and right click and go to composition settings, you will see that we can change the duration here. We have hours, minutes, seconds and frames. Please do not confuse the seconds with frames. I know you're used to looking at a clock and you will assume that that is seconds. That bit is frames. So we want this to be 05. Okay, click OK. And what we're going to do is record that position. So if I was to move that there and then move up here to the timeline and move it across, you will see that in this space here nothing happens. And the reason for that is because we haven't recorded it. So I'm just going to push Control Z again, and I'm going to push this stopwatch next to the word position, and that's brought up this little diamond, and as you can see on the timeline, that little diamond's there. However, it's actually set it at second 5, and we want this to be down in the front. So actually what I'm going to do is come down here, and if I push that diamond there, it's recorded it again. Now if I move this slider up to the other end, and then I move this across, okay, you will see that we now have that line in the middle, and you can kind of see it moving as we scrub through. Okay, if I scrub in, zoom in, sorry, you will see that all of our frames there over 5 seconds appear. Now if I put this through playback, you will see now we have a really soft, subtle movement happening across those 5 seconds. Okay, so now we're finished with this one. Background layer, we're now going to move this time slider back to the beginning. We're going to turn the visibility off in the background, and we're just going to focus on Indy. So we want him moving. We don't want him moving as much. We want him moving more than the background because obviously he is closer to us. So we'll see more of his movement. So I'm going to push the down arrow and down arrow again. And I'm going to push the stopwatch on his position. And I'm just going to pull this across. And I'm going to scroll him backwards, like so. Okay. And if I play that back, you'll see that we see him moving very nicely across. Okay. Now with the foreground, so it's going to hide them again. We're going to do the same thing. So I'll push the down arrow, and with the position, I'm just going to push the stopwatch, but this time we're going to move it to the right. Okay. And we're going to move it a lot more because this is closer to us. So theoretically, it should move a lot further as we're closer to it. So if we play that back, we can see that movement. Okay. So to play back, sorry, it's the space bar. I'm not sure if I actually said that before. So space bar, if you push it, it'll play, and if you push it again, it will stop. So with all those together, if we get all 3 layers together and push the space bar, it may take a while to load a preview if you've got a lot going on in the background on your computer. But again, we've now got a nice kind of in-depth movement happening from one static image. So from this, what we're going to do is we're now going to add some more depth. So we've got it going across, but we actually want it to kind of we want to act like we're zooming in on this as well to give a much more emphasis to his stare and that kind of thinking time that he has as he's looking at the object. So this time we're going to start with the foreground. So I'm going to push the down arrow, and this time we're going to be playing with the scale tool. So I'm going to push the key, the stopwatch, sorry, on the to key the scale at second 0, and then I'm going to move along the timeline, and this time we're going to kind of scale that up. Now I'm not happy with the final composition here, okay, because it kind of cut off and we lose this background, and we're kind of really, if you look at it at the beginning, we are at the height of this. So what we're going to do up here to solve that issue is to scale up the position as well, okay, so we end up with a nice bit of framing like so, okay. And then with the midground layer, we're going to zoom in on Indy, so we're going to push the scale tool again. We're going to bring that scale up. We don't want it to be as much as the trinket. But we certainly want it to, I think we certainly do want it to be more than that. So if we, yeah, okay. And then with the background, we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to push the scale key. And this time we don't want the background to go as much. So I'm just going to literally do it to 115. And we'll play back and we'll kind of see how that looks. Okay. So now we've created a parallax effect. We've also bringing more emphasis on that kind of 3D depth. In fact, as Indiana Jones goes down, goes in, we want him to go down as well, much like this one. So we'll just sort of see if that improves that a little bit. So this is another thing that you're going to have to kind of get used to, is kind of really studying what you're looking at, look at the things that don't feel right, and kind of having the confidence to kind of go ahead and change them. So I'm actually just going to bring that down, and if we play that back, we'll see if it looks any better. Yeah, okay, I think I prefer that now because we're kind of keeping pace with his eye line. Yeah, that's much better. I much prefer that. So we've looked at how to set keyframes. Import our composition. We looked at how to kind of set keyframes and manipulate the position and scale and record those to mimic 3D effects. Don't forget to save your scene. Go File, Save As, and there you go. It might be worth having a look for one of your own images to use. The film images are really good because they're well lit and separated. And in another tutorial we will look at kind of how to edit a photograph to do this with. So thanks for watching. Have a go yourself with the project files on Moodle, and I'll